Nice to see you all. I know the EV and E-racing is next door, so the competition between Formula One and parking, you know, is always going to be, we always might lose out to that. But thank you very much for coming to this one, and hopefully you'll find out that parking is just as exciting as Formula One. So, yeah, my name's Dan Hubert. I'm the founder of AppyWay, here we go. Before we go into sort of the potential of the Curbside, I'll just give you a bit of background on how I came here to be standing on the stage today, and the light bulb moment. As was explained a minute ago, the Royal Albert Hall was the place. There's the location. And about 10 years ago, I was driving to go and see Cirque du Soleil at the Royal Albert Hall. And I was going through London's congested streets, getting later by every mile. And then when I arrived, I was then faced with a dilemma where we all face where to park the car. Every single place, every bay, residence bay, paid bay, was full as the eye could see. And then I was going to work out, well, where do I go next? It's the usual thing. So just as I was to drive off, a traffic warden was whistling by, walking along, happily with his ticketing machine. And I said, on the off chance, if I could park on this single yellow line, this like 8 meters of stretch of yellow line that just parked by the curb, and he said, yeah, of course you can. Of course you can park there. There's a signpost 2 streets away, which relates to this 8 meters of yellow line. And I was like, okay, that's good to know. So I basically parked up, feeling like a VIP. And parked right outside the Royal Albert Hall and got whisked to my seat and sat down just in time for the show to begin. So I'm sure you're all familiar with these signs. They're deeply confusing. You need a PhD to understand what's going on. And if they're not the right place at the right time, then it's even harder. So while the Cirque du Soleil was going on, all I could see in my mind, in my imagination, was a world very much like in the Hollywood movie Tron, a world of digital lines and roads and boundaries and just bright digital information. And I began to think about the potential of having this information, digital lines of the boundaries, in my hand or at my computer at home before I set off, so I could understand about this information, about the destination. I began to think about, what about this information, these digital lines being overlaid onto navigation apps? So as you're driving along from A to B and you get to your destination, you know if you can park or load. You don't have to be rubbernecking the signs and potentially crashing into the car in front of you. So I thought about the power of this data about the destination, and I had this vision that I could make parking forgettable. And so when the show finished, I basically went back home, and as you do, I went through all 33 local authority websites that make up Greater London, and I found, I was expecting to find lots of wonderfully accessible data, perhaps digital maps, but what I did find is just an absolute horrible mess of information, and this is the best of the worst. Okay, these are the heroes of the councils who had basically some PDFs with some zones, but they had some information, put some colours on it as well, so you can slightly understand what's going on, so that was nice of them. A lot of the other boroughs had literally just PDF after PDF, so I started to download hundreds of PDFs, started to print them all off as well, so I got a little bit obsessed at this point. And I started to build a jigsaw piece on my walls and on my floors, and I covered pretty much my flat with all these zones of all the 33 local authorities. And it became very apparent from my giant paper jigsaw that the information was far from complete, far from accessible. And I thought it was extremely valuable information that should be in the hands of drivers, so we can make informed decisions about how we get to our destination. So at that point, perhaps I should have stopped, but instead I decided to give up my job, use my savings in my bank account, and then cycle the streets of London. So I cycled hundreds of miles, creating the maps myself, and then spent hundreds of hours digitising, standardising, and centralising all the information, because the match days, bank holidays, all the edge cases that come into play on the UK's Curbside can go up to about 110,000 different edge cases. So I've created this data set. So I published it. I found a developer to help me put it into an app because I wasn't very technical then. I put it into the App Store for people to find out about this app, and it got some great press. It got into the Evening Standard, and I was very happy with the results. So that's kind of how it started. Then I've got a call from the head of fleet from a very large enterprise company who had 8,000 fleet driving across London, and they had a £4 million parking ticket. So they're getting £4 million worth of tickets just from 8,000 fleet. And they had a £1 million department processing the tickets. And I thought, that's a £5 million problem from one company. So I thought, my solution to my problem was relevant to way more people than I've ever imagined. So, you know, across the world, there are billions, 1.4 billion cars, all trying to get from A to B. But in fact, they're spending about 5 minutes trying to work out the nearest place around B. It's a completely bad experience. And this experience, you know, is, if you think about going to a supermarket, you know, imagine a supermarket where there are no aisle numbers, no prices, no names, no brands, and nothing at all. And then you go to the aisle, and then you don't know if your cards will be accepted or they accept cash or not. And that's the experience we get at the curbside, and it's just not acceptable. But yet we have this sort of weird Stockholm syndrome. We accept the pain and the burden, and all the onus is on the driver to understand what's going on at the curbside, whereas actually this information can be actually transferred all the way back up to sort of the fleet management guys to understand actually you can't go there, and that responsibility can be shared by all. So, the problem is huge, right? There's billions of people trying to do this every day. And it is a local issue. Parking is a deeply local issue and a deeply political issue, but it's a global problem, right? There's 1.4 billion cars trying to do this every single day. The UK transport network generates 27% of the emissions in the UK. There are 40 million vehicles, of which only, unfortunately, right now, 477,000 are EV, most of which are in London. And the domestic road, the transport emits 122 million tons of carbon, metric tons of carbon. So it's a massive amount of carbon emitted from the UK transport, from 25% of the transport network. And then 90% of the transport network is actually just vans, taxis, and personal cars. So the personal car ownership model is wrong. We need to drive fundamentally less, a lot less. And we need to, car usership is fundamental. Car ownership needs to sort of phase out. But the personal cost to drivers right now is massive again. 44 hours a year is on average spent per driver trying to find that parking space, trying to get to B. £733. This was done before the price of petrol went up, so double it, why not? And the UK economy, you know, that hidden cost, okay, everyone accepts this pain, but behind the pain is a massive cost from everyone. You think about every time the plumber knocks on your door or rings you before they come on, they always go, "Can I park here, Governor?" Like, parking is part of everyone's questioning on the first an engagement of a conversation. The headlines are filled with like catastrophic headlines, and it's, you know, deeply horrible to read, but the world is burning, our lungs are burning, and air quality, as I said, is local problem is air quality, and pretty much every child in London goes to school in areas of very high toxic air quality. So all this can be reduced by giving better destination data. Unfortunately, the councils have got a bit of a problem. There is a big initiative from the government for a digital transformation strategy over the next sort of 1 to 3 years, perhaps. But, you know, hopefully it'll get quicker now. The Prime Minister's in play. But unfortunately, the government, the councils, there are 408 of them, are having to manage traffic regulation orders, which were published in 1984. And the mid-1980s is the same time it was became illegal to smoke on the underground, and it became illegal not to wear a seatbelt. So the world has changed significantly since 1984, yet the methods and the regulation that cities have to work with haven't at all. There's 408 local authorities, 200 have responsibilities over regulation, and it costs £1 billion a year for 408 to manage that curbside. So it's a really, really, really inefficient business. So luckily, my pain at the curbside at Royal Albert Hall has sort of turned into a larger system now. So it is a very capable and very powerful data platform that digitally transforms the curbside and turns it into an operating system, if you like, a plug-and-play solution to allow mobility to come in. It's a two-sided platform. We're all about giving the well providing a well to government and local authorities, and the well produces the purest water to clean the streets. So the two-sided platform, the ingredients of this platform are pretty simple. It's digital curbside maps, so all the rules, restrictions, regulations, and as was said before, we now have a map of the United Kingdom. We can process over 110,000 different edge cases. London is 14,000 kilometers of restricted curbside, which we've mapped using sort of Google-style cars. And it's high granular maps of all the curbside, so real big data. With endless possibilities. So the cities are really benefiting from the processes, which I'll go into later. They get occupancy data as well. And cashless payments as well. So the cashless parking model, as we know it today, is cashless payments. But again, that's just the till. That's a transactional part of the curbside. What about the information before? You want to know whether you can or should go there beforehand. So the GovTech side is a very powerful well for governments to sort of transition to carbon zero. And get the water out, and it goes into their mobility. And literally anyone from just a personal driver to a fleet, logistics, field service engineers, EV drivers, motorcycles, disabled people, the list kind of goes on, EV, all the way to autonomous vehicles, will fundamentally need this data to sort of decarbonize their journey. So think about the sort of power of like multiple data sets turning into a product, because it's not just about data. Data is useless until you turn it into a product. And the Amazon store, the Amazon Fresh have done a great job. You can walk into the store, pick up all the things, you feel like you're shoplifting, you walk out the door, and you go, wow, that was a seamless experience. They've turned grocery shopping into a really nice experience. So that is multiple data points becoming this sort of incredible frictionless product, which is user-centric, because fundamentally today, the parking industry as we know it is not consumer-centric. It doesn't care about the customer. This is a demonstration of how the app looks. It's called Appy Parking. So that's Appy Parking, which is the sort of shop window, if you like, of the data from the platform. And really, it's not about being pro-car; it's about being pro-curb. And as we sort of work for a lot of local authorities, it's about telling them that they can't just turn their back on 40 million vehicles in the UK. You know, people need to have the sort of the stepping stones to get off their car, or get out their car, or choose a different mode of transport. And so you have to know your enemy to beat your enemy. And unfortunately, a lot of local authorities just have a mindset, oh, ban the cars. But as I said, you can't just get rid of a car. There's an awful lot of steps you have to go through. And so we can help them on that transition. So I'll talk so a little bit of some sort of high-level sort of ideas about what digital curb can do. So, as I said before, you know, better destination data can provide educated choices to allow us to choose how we travel from A to B. So that will empower commuters to choose the cleanest and greenest transport. So if I was to open my app and go to destination and it says no parking, then obviously I wouldn't drive there. Then I would just take another mode of transport, you know, a train or a bus. A digital curb influences active travel. So 1 in 6 people in the UK die from inactivity. And that actually causes a 1.6 billion drain on the NHS. So weirdly, you can kind of contribute better destination data to help people to get off their seats and not get in the car and do something else instead. So obesity can be reduced by digitising the curb. Fleets and logistics providers can send customers exact time of arrivals. You know, you don't have to wait for that window of 6 hours or window of 12 hours and stay at home, and that's not very productive for you either. So you'll be able to sort of get better information. The logistics providers will be able to go, I'm going to be here now. They're based upon all the predictive models that we can build. So this would be first-time right arrivals every time. Cities, so EV, right? We all need to drive less, and the future is all about EV. But unfortunately, there are a lot of bottlenecks. There are 30,000 charge points on street at the moment, which have been sort of widely celebrated, but that's only 10% of where they need to get to. We need to get to about 300,000, up to 600,000 charge points by 2030. So we're woefully behind the numbers required to get to the supply and demand model, so everyone feels safe by having a car and being able to plug it in when they need to. So cities, for example, are waiting for 6 months to get enough EV requests and enough changes to the curbside to put it into a local newspaper ad in order to make it worth their while. It's costing them about £17,000 per change from a paid bay to an EV bay. These are huge costs to local authorities, and without data, without platforms, we're going to keep on slipping behind our carbon zero targets. And EV charge point operators, there's about 40 of them in the UK, all trying to put plugs on streets. They've been given about £1.4 billion worth of funding, which is an incredible amount of money. But as we've seen in Coventry, where there has the most number of EV charge points anywhere in the UK, has got the lowest usage because actually EVs are very expensive and the demographic of Coventry can't afford EVs. So there's all these sort of imbalances going on, and also the constraints by the regulation isn't allowing that speed of change of purpose for the curbside. So the cities are really, really struggling. And fundamentally, data will enable the transition to EV quicker. Local high streets, they were suffering before the pandemic. They really suffered in the pandemic. And going into next year in the recession, they're really going to suffer even more. And so high streets have always suffered. You don't want to drive in sometimes because of the uncertainty. Most people put off that action because, oh, it's just a pain, I'll get a ticket, oh, it's expensive. So we've done trial innovation, which I'll talk about later, about how we've actually improved the accessibility of the high streets, made them more inviting, not scary places to go and the anxiety of leaving your car somewhere. This actually does increase the GDP and can reduce congestion and improve the air quality as well. So there's always going to be a balance between pro-car and pro-curb and the revenues the cities need and the local GDP. So virtual bays. So, there could be a point in time where you don't need paint on the roads. Imagine naked roads, which would be beautiful, like back in the 20s or something. Just really nice, aesthetically pleasing roads because the data is in the vehicles who make the decisions. But that means you can be really smart with that asset. You can sweat the asset even more. Multiple vehicles from multiple purposes over a period of a day can use that bay. You could be a residence bay at night and a disabled base during this time and a logistics bay during another time. But ultimately, we can give better accessibility to disabled people. We even know like dip curbs on the highway, so they can park by a bay where the wheelchair can easily go up the ramp. all this information can be sort of turned into products and useful things. So let's take a drink. And really, what we really care about, it's not about just lots of people or lots of vehicles all trying to sort of go in sporadically. There's a lot of talk about vehicles to infrastructure, but really, if you have the great kind of data, it should be infrastructure talking to vehicles. So it becomes the information about the infrastructure talking about the mobility, the vehicles and mobility assets, and it becomes an urban air traffic control analogy. So Heathrow doesn't just allow planes to come in; it actually controls what's going on. So you can control vehicles 40 minutes before they come into town, and use air quality, the local GDP to sort of balance how vehicles can come in and can't come in at different times of day. So it puts a very powerful play and control system back into local authorities, because right now they have no control over the network. So here's 3 case studies. This was Harrogate. This is sort of the world's first on and off-street digital smart parking solution that combined real-time availability from sensors, these little hockey pucks that stick on the street, and these little sensors actually have Bluetooth in them, and it did a little handshake, a virtual handshake with your phone. So at the moment, you drive into a town, you'd have to work out the location IDs and do all the things that we have to do right now. In this environment, you knew exactly where the bay was, you knew exactly if it was free. When you drove over to the bay, your phone, with one click, talked to the sensor, and you went into the city and you enjoyed what you were doing. What we saw there was an incredible change. In just the first 6 months, there was 18% adoption. The rest continued to use cash machines. And it kind of removed 1,270 tons of carbon from within the first 6 months, which is about, I think, about 210 elephants, so quite a lot. So what we also saw was the local GDP was going up because people using our system were staying longer on the high street. They didn't have to rush back because of that anxiety that the parking meter was going to expire and there'll be a ticket on their window. Because when they got back into the car, the system knew the car was departed and then end the session. So it was taking away all of those problems that we experience every day. And if you start to scale up that, and this will happen over the next 3 years when the government starts to get behind a larger platform that we're collaborating on, when you get to 100% adoption, and this is kind of based on very sort of pessimistic levels, but it could remove about 6 million tons of carbon from the network when you have all 408 local authorities offering data into cars and into devices. So data is really, really powerful when you turn it into a product that people need at the curbside. Digital curbside management. So the tool also helps, as I said, speed up the regulation processes. So what we can do there, for example, it means we can get more parking schemes through local authorities. We can get more EV bays down. We can get more cycle hub bays. We can get more car club bays down. Because right now, as I said, there's these 6-month blockers, and they have only got like a couple of people in the department who can actually do this stuff. Southwark, we've slashed their times and got cycle hangers out from 5 weeks to 2 weeks. We've actually doubled their capacity for cycle hangers from 200 in 2 years to 200 in 1 year. Sounds really impressive, but it's really bad in terms of where we have to get to, where there's 60,000 cycle hanger requests in the inbox of local authorities in London alone. And there's 60,000 because they can't process the request fast enough. And then finally, on the last case study, with Morrison. So this is a utilities company installing smart meter installs. And smart meter installs are good because it helps us be very aware of the consumption at home. 100 engineers are installing 80,000 smart meters every single year. And using our data and Appy Parking Plus, we help them reduce their job aborts, which is basically failed attempts to go and do their job because they couldn't get near the destination. 30% reduction in job aborts. That's a significant amount of jobs that we've saved, allowing smart meter installs to get back into the houses. And not only do we save them that, but we save them time by driving to the right destination for the first time, saving congestion and pollution. So the big thing is flashing at me. I think I might have spoken longer than I should have done. So hopefully you've seen that perhaps the curbside is a little bit more exciting than Formula One. I don't know. But sort of going back to sort of the start of the journey, A to P is the new B. And had I had that information 10 years ago, and I looked in my app, I would have seen there would have been a little green tick on the yellow line saying it was free. The restrictions are okay for me for what I want to do. And as time goes on, the data will become thicker and enriched. We'll start to pull in data from connected vehicles. So it would have predictive models going, it's free, the rules are saying it's free, but the predictive model says chances are you've got 10% chance of a parking space. And then at that point, I'll go, okay, well then I'll go via tube and go by train. So the deeper the inventory of data we can collect from lots of different places, the more focus we can provide the decision to take the right mode of transport. So there is possibility. There's a lot of hope and a lot of chance for us to digitally transform the curbside and turn it into the hero to help save our cities and make them more livable, breathable places. Thank you very much.
I turn my mic on. I have. Wow, I've learned, haven't I? One question I would have is what kind of uptake have you had from sort of either local or more national governments about seeing the potential of this?
Well, I've kind of been campaigning for about 10 years because the first phone call I made was the Department of Transport when I realised what a systemic issue it was, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I didn't speak to anyone. I spoke to the secretary, and they didn't ever call me back. So, but actually, 10 years on, they are literally on a journey to create a platform to do this, make it happen. So, digital transformation is happening, but it's taken sort of 10 years of me banging on the doors of the Department of Transport.
Have you had much support?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of legislation, primary, secondary bill. So a lot of things are holding this up. But from our perspective, we're just carrying on and making it happen as well.
Okay, well, we have time for any questions from the room, quickly, if anyone has anything they wish to ask or add. We have one down at the front here.
Yeah.
Hi there. I've been here 2 days, and this is the best presentation by far. So
thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kostas Papadopoulos. I look after business development for a Greek-Swedish company called Udivo. We develop solutions for businesses and for cities, energy management to smart city applications. So the question that I have for you is, how much do you rely on sort of IoT devices? You mentioned sensors for the occupancy data. Is that a limitation for you?
Well, our platform we can ingest about 20 IoT data points. So sensors on the street, a connected vehicle, telematics, camera vision from dash cams, CCTV, number plate recognition, barrier entry. The list kind of goes on. So we've, over the sort of 10 years, pulled in all types of IoT, and then we can then create the highest predictive models of about sort of 93%. So an average industry standard is about 60, and that's pretty much a flick of a coin. 50% chance of getting a space is not particularly good, but if you get to 93, you're talking some really good numbers there.
Okay, do we have any further? There we go.
Are you looking at going global?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think yes is the answer. Pollution has no boundaries, and the world needs to see less cars on the road. So I think, when I started, obviously there was no data, there was no platforms, so it's taken 10 years to drum up enough investment to make all this happen, and we're at a stage now. Actually, we have gone international. We've just gone. Dublin is our first outside the UK.
Can I ask another quick question?
Yeah.
Is that allowed? Thank you. Yeah, the presentation was really good. Didn't say that before. Maybe I missed it in the presentation, but is there an ability to also track and sense the bicycle parking? Is that something that you've got on your
we
radar?
have a map of all bicycle bays across the UK, and we know where they are. I mean, we work with car club owners, large car players who don't know where their car clubs are, or the cities don't know where the inventory is. So we've created an inventory of the whole curbside, so we know where everything is.
Okay. And we've got one final one up at the back there.
Hiya. What's your vision in terms of integration into other map systems and making it sort of like one smooth process rather than being like, okay, I need to do Google Maps to here and then I need to switch to this map app and then pay for it and this, that and the other?
It's, so my first phone call was to the Department of Transport. My second phone call was to someone I knew at Google. And I was like, imagine this in your system. And they are doing some, they're very interested in this space. But the trouble is, the parking and if there's regulation is extremely granular. Right, if there's 110 different edge cases in the 110,000 different edge cases in the UK so far, that's very granular, and it's all. If you get that wrong, every meter means if you get it wrong, you get a parking ticket. So on a national scale, that's we kind of solved that problem because cities are doing it for us. On a global scale, it's getting the city engagement as well. So we will get to a point where that does happen, but these guys want global data sets, and when parking is a hyper-local thing.
Okay. Well, if everyone could give Dan a warm round of applause, that's fascinating. Thank you, Dan. And that is it. We are done. That is the end of Sustainability Live on Stage 2. From me, for everyone who's been in here over the last 2 days, thank you. I do appreciate it. I freely admit I was being a little competitive with Scott next door. Okay, a lot competitive. Big thanks to the tech guys at the back. They've done a fantastic job, kept everything working. And thank you for you guys for actually coming and enjoying the last couple of days. So safe trip home and, sustainable trip home. And hope you find somewhere to park when you get there.